It is regional championship time on Inside the Zone. Regional championship up for grabs this coming Friday. Justin Kinney of Optimum Performance Sports joining us. And I got to tell you, I covered high school football in Fort Wayne for 14 seasons now. I was never more surprised, sometimes pleasantly so, sometimes just shocked, sometimes at the, not even who won, just at the discrepancy between the scoring. Of last Friday. I mean, it was a wild sectional championship week. What's your big takeaway before we dive into regionals from last week? Because, my God, I don't think anyone could have predicted what happened.
My big takeaway is we don't know what the heck we're talking about.
Oh, that's been well documented.
But just reinforcing that opinion was last Friday. If you would have told us heading into last Friday night that Snyder was going to be done, Leo was going to be done, Luers was going to be done, we would have said, you're insane. And then at the end of the night on Friday evening, that's exactly what we had. It's crazy.
I mean, it was crazy that Leo's done it. I thought Wayne had a pretty good chance to win in Mississinawa. Obviously, underestimated Ole Miss. And then you take a look at the way Eastside was able to kind of dominate that game and execute their game plan and keep the ball away from Luers. I know the score at the end was a lot closer in 21-16, but it didn't feel like Luers was really within striking distance unless something crazy happened at the end.
It was amazing how Eastside was able to execute their game plan. It was to play keep away from Bishop Luers, and it was similar to playing an academy in college, and you're going to give very limited possessions, and you better maximize your possessions when you do have them, and Luers wasn't able to do that. Only had 3 offensive possessions in the first half. By the time they got the ball back in the third, they were down 21-3 with 4.5 minutes left in the third quarter, and they had to play catch up from there. Really close to recovering that onside kick with 45 seconds to go, ended up going Eastside's way and game over. It was amazing what Eastside was able to do, and if you can sell an undefeated team short, I feel like we were for Eastside, and they proved us wrong on Friday.
Well, one thing that is not surprising is that South Adams and Adams Central are playing for a regional championship. We've seen this before, and we've seen these two teams clash back in Week 6. This is a improved AC team from then. They've improved along the season, but this is a much different South Adams team because they've got their quarterback back, Aiden Warner. Not that Owen Warner did a bad job, but Aiden Warner is a senior with experience. When you take a look at this matchup, what makes this game more intriguing than when we saw them the first time around when it was a 48-7 game in Week 6?
Well, you mentioned it. It's Aiden Warner. Him behind center gives South Adams a fighting chance in this one. But then you look at the defensive side of the football, South Adams is still going to have to get stops against Adams Central. It needs to figure out some things that didn't work the first time around. You know, South Adams can go out and score 30 points on Friday, and if they give up 48, it's still a lopsided football game. So I think while we get excited about Aiden Warner being back in the lineup for South Adams, how does that defense of South Adams respond the second time around for Adams Central? They need to figure some things out to slow the Flying Jets down.
Now, in this rivalry, we've seen games in the regular season, the script completely flipped when we get to the postseason. We've seen that really from AC's side, where they've gotten beat in the regular season against some of those really good South Adams teams and then come back and figure some things out in the playoffs. How can Grant Mosier do the exact same thing that he saw happen to his team just a few years ago this time around and be on the positive side of that?
Well, it worked out with Monroe Central, right? They lose in the regular season, and then they turn around and beat them at home in the playoffs. So I think for Grant Mosier, you're taking that same approach. Hey, look, we avenged one regular season loss in the playoffs. Let's do a second. And the good thing is with Adams Central and playing them, you know what you're going to get. You know what you have to defend. Now, the problem is actually stopping it or slowing it down. So I think while South Adams game plan-wise, while other teams around the area are trying to figure out just what they're going to have to deal with on Friday, South Adams already knows. It's just all about matching that physicality, matching that intensity, and making some plays.
Aiden Warner threw for almost 200 yards, 4 touchdowns against Union City. Adds another element to that offense that can't be understated.
And Trey Schock, a phenomenal game, back-to-back games for him that have been big time. So he's been a definite beneficiary with Aiden Warner back behind center.
Aiden definitely makes those guys work better, makes everybody better.
Yeah, and then you're able to put Owen Warner elsewhere. So it definitely benefits.
Eastbrook, Eastside. Eastbrook is Eastbrook. They do their Eastbrook thing. But one thing I will say, Jeff Adamson, they've had a lot of trips to state and then run into Webo, and Webo's been able to throw on them. I mean, we've seen it happen multiple times, and we thought, okay, Eastbrook hasn't changed. This year, they're really able to throw the football a little bit. They've got Jet Engel. He's thrown for 15 touchdowns, over 1,100 yards. not a ton,
Yeah.
but enough.
That's like over 5,000 yards in a season for a normal team.
Right,
To
yeah,
throw
if-
for
yes,
1,100 yards
yes.
for an Eastside Panthers team. Or for Eastbrook team. Look, Eastbrook's bread and butter is still the run in between the tackles, but the threat of the pass is what makes them so dangerous and multifaceted. At this point, though, after what we saw with Eastside last week, I don't know how you discount them. I don't know what to expect in this one because I thought I knew what to expect at Bishop Luers and was thrown for a loop. So Eastbrook having to come up to Butler, they have to deal with Laban Davis, which is easier said than done.
When you take a look at Eastside, how do you make sure? I don't think they're going to have this problem, but so much of the talk was after games this year was, okay, we played well and we won, but is this going to be enough to beat
Yeah.
Luers? Is this going to be enough to Luers? How do you make sure that they're, 15 to 18-year-old
Yeah.
kids, not content with just, and I don't think they are going to be, but how do you make sure they're not content with just that Luers victory? Because Eastside is ranked number 1. I mean, they're no joke in this
Yeah.
one.
I think the message from Todd Mason is you have to have a quick memory. You have to move past that one. But also, you're facing a situation where you can win a program's first ever regional championship game. So he can stress to his kids, look, as much as we accomplished last week, we'd already won a sectional title before. Yeah, it was only our second in school history, and it was in dramatic fashion. But we've never gotten past the regional round, never won a regional championship. So in terms of goals, you have to feel like this team has yet to achieve all its goals, and one of those has to be the first ever regional title for Eastside.
3A. We're going backwards. 1A,
Let's go.
2A, 3A. Brebeuf is at Norwell. Brebeuf, a traditional powerhouse. They're kind of the same this year. One of the things that strikes me when I take a look at Brebeuf's team is they got a quarterback in Nolan Buckman, and he's thrown for almost 2,500 yards, 33 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And I go through, we talk about Norwell's defense being really good, but one of the things that would scare me is they haven't really faced a team that's been able to air it out that well. East Noble was not able as effective in the throwing game this year. We saw Leah was predominantly run, so those are the better teams in the Northeast State. Greg Bolt's been a nice quarterback as well. Brebeuf's faced another level of competition though. How concerned are you if you're Josh Gerber and saying, okay, man, this is like really our first challenge of a team that's going to throw it like this?
Yeah, it is absolutely a big challenge for Norwell, and precisely because of what you said, there's no real pass-heavy offenses in the Northeast 8 this year. So I felt like if you game plan for one team in the Northeast 8, the primary principles apply to pretty much everybody in the Northeast 8, maybe a wrinkle here or there. But now you really need to focus on getting some pressure on Brebeuf. You look at Brebeuf and what their 2 losses were, what, Cathedral and Roncalli.
That's not bad.
I mean, those are 2 of the top 5 teams in the state. I mean, Cathedral's the number 2 team in the state behind Center Grove. So I look at this as maybe last year's Chittard-Concordia matchup in 3A, because we looked at it and go, okay, here's the end of the road for Concordia. And yeah, they did lose, but they were competitive against
They made that
Chittard.
a game down there.
Yeah, a little bit more than we thought. So maybe we're looking at this, we're still maybe undervaluing Norwell when we look at this matchup and say this is a tough one for them. And maybe they can continue to surprise. They get them at home, which I think is big. And if they can slow down that pass game, get some sacks, maybe a pick or 2, that secondary of Norwell is just so good and so underappreciated because really it hasn't been tested that much over the course of the season. So I think maybe advantage Norwell in that respect, and we'll see how they match up with Brebeuf.
One thing I like about Norwell is that their passing game got a little bit of mojo last week because early in that game against Peru, Leighton Bailey throws for a couple touchdowns, in the first and second quarter, and you're like, okay, we haven't seen this Norwell. It's been Mason, it's been Colbert or it's been Graft on the ground. And really, they were able to move the ball through the air relatively effectively, especially early in that game. I know they'd like to put up more than, get out of the 20s
23,
against a Peru team, but they win on the road and they throw it pretty darn well, at least early on.
Gives them some balance offensively, which I think they're going to need this week. And also, this is when it really gets real for a lot of these football teams. And the ones that haven't necessarily been tested in the sectional now have to flip that switch. And I think that's the message from Coach Gerber is like, look, it's getting real now, and we cannot have any letdowns because Brebeuf is not going to take it easy on us if we do.
In 5A, we got Bishop Dwenger at Zionsville. Little surprised, I think.
Maybe.
I think, because you take a look at Snyder beat Dwenger by 11, and it was 33-22, but it didn't necessarily
close,
feel that close.
Yeah.
But man, what a great job of the Bishop Dwenger coaching staff and the Saints to turn the tables just a few weeks later and get a victory the way they did, 42-20 at Shields Field. What can you say about the way Dwenger's playing at this point, leading into what is going to be a tough test against the Zionsville team?
I feel like the message finally got through to Bishop Dwenger from their coaches. Is like, look, everybody's been saying how physical you cannot be and how you don't have enough size to really be tough and challenge teams in the trenches. And they were able to do that on Friday in convincing fashion. This wasn't a last-second field goal. You beat them by 20-plus points, beat a Snyder team that's looked really good down the stretch. So for Bishop Dwenger to handle the adversity they did on and off the field, on the field losing 4 of 5 in the middle of the season and coming back and even looking less than stellar against Northside the week before, to then have the game they did on Friday is phenomenal. Congratulations to them. And now they get another shot at Zionsville, the team that knocked them out of the playoffs a year ago.
I really like the way that KJ Tipman was running the ball on Friday, and that set up the pass. They were able to throw it enough and able to run it effectively enough to make the pass effective. It was a much better balance, I think, and I'm sure that the Saints would love to continue that going forward.
Yeah, and it all starts up front for both offensive and defensive lines, and for them to play the way they did up front was huge. You're going up against a D1 quality lineman in DJ Moore, and really tough matchup for Bishop Dwenger against Snyder, and they made it look easy, really, in all honesty. So at this point, you have to like the way Bishop Dwenger, can they carry it into a second week with how they plan? Definitely peaked, played their most complete football game of the season last Friday. Can they continue it on the road?
Well, Carroll gets to be at home in 6A
Yes.
against Westfield, and 36-0 was the score against Warsaw.
Didn't feel that close.
Unfortunately, here, the double bye, in my opinion, the double bye killed Warsaw. I mean, I would like to see, not that Carroll wouldn't have beat them. I'm taking nothing away from Carroll. But the way Warsaw lost, they were not sharp. They had fumbles. They had a snap go over the punter's head in the first half. And then the way they grinded out and they don't throw, there was just no way for them to come back in the second half when they were down 29-0. I would like to see that game played on a little more equal footing. But I digress. Carroll took advantage of everything and looked really good, played one of their better games of the season at the right time. They're facing a team that has Maximus Webster at quarterback, maybe the best quarterback. He's a Ball State commit, maybe the best quarterback they've seen this season. So how do you go into this one if you're Carroll? You don't want to be overconfident, but you want to continue the way you're playing because you're playing some pretty darn good football. Yeah,
back-to-back shutouts, first time since 1978 for Carroll. They're playing once again at home, and who knows, they may just go the entire playoffs and playing at home. It's a tremendous challenge with Westfield. You mentioned the quarterback. They have a defensive end going to Louisville. Had an offer from Alabama. So
is that good?
It's decent.
Okay.
It's decent. So how does Carroll move on from last week? Because the competition gets incredibly tough this week. I actually like Carroll's defense in this matchup. I think the way it's playing, 17 total points in the last 6 games combined, something like that. It's locked in for sure. And I feel like if they can protect Jeff Becker and allow him to make some plays, they can get Luke Carmody on the ground, getting a little bit, at least being able to play that ball control game. I feel like maybe Carroll has a shot. And I will say right now, this is the best chance for Carroll to win a regional championship in school history. I feel like while Westfield is good, very good, I think Carroll, the way they're playing, matches up well, and who knows, we could be talking about a first-time regional champion.
And John Harrell's website, it's all statistical based. He's got Westfield as about 75% chance of moving on. Carroll only about 25%. I feel like Carroll's got a much better chance than
I feel like that too. I feel, and maybe we're just drinking the 260 Kool-Aid. I don't know. I just feel like
it is delicious.
It is, and expect to, the Carroll Blue, we'll drink it all day. But you can't discount what they did last week against Warsaw in that offense. I mean, to be able to go in there and the gimmicky offense that you have to prepare for, the stunts, the counters, all that stuff, to be able to go in and shut that out. And I know Warsaw had some mistakes and maybe some unforced errors as well, but 36-0 is a statement, and we'll see if Carroll can keep it up.
I like that defense. You were talking about it last week. It's underrated. I like that defense a lot.
Absolutely.
They have playmakers. Reminds me of, the Homestead defenses of a few years ago when they were competing for sectional championships. It got them to the next level, and here we are with Carroll again. What are you most looking forward to about this week? Because this is a week where you could see a lot of our teams moving on or very, very few moving on.
After last week, I don't even know what to expect anymore. I really don't. I told you before we started, I wouldn't be shocked if we're sitting here next week only talking about Adams Central. Wouldn't be shocked if we're sitting here talking about 3 or 4 teams next week. So this is when you really have to step up and the level goes up, particularly for our area schools, particularly for a Carroll, particularly for a DeWanger. It's like, okay, for your first time now, you're seeing out of area teams and how you match up. And so I feel like I'm excited to see our teams because so we go throughout the entire season going, could they match up? I don't really know. And we feel like we know things, and obviously last Friday showed that we clearly don't.
My wife would tell you I know nothing, but that's what they pay me for. That's the kind of insight that we get right here. We've got regional championships this week. I know it's going to be crazy, but we'll wrap it all up next. We'll be talking semi-state already next week. It seems like it's gone by quick. It seems like the postseason has really moved by quick.
It's moved on, and we're 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving and state championships.
It's already week 13. That's insane. I was writing that down beforehand, and I was like, I can't believe we're almost here. So, all right. For Justin, I'm Glenn. That's going to wrap it up this week. We'll see you next Monday talking semi-state here on Inside the Zone.